here we are, and here we go. It's Gridiron 360 in the Crizzle. Oh, shizzle. What's happening, Dave?
What's going on?
My name is Bill. Thank you for listening. We are going through 2020 draft prospects for this year's NFL draft. We've gone through 4 of the Power 5, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and we now come to the final of the Power 5 conferences in the Pac-12. We're moving out west, going to California. I'm going back to Cali. So, and after this, hopefully we're going to try to knock out another one with just everyone else, whether it be Group of 5, independent schools. There are obviously other prospects coming out that we haven't mentioned, some of them high, that are not in any of these conferences. So we will try to get that out. It's Tuesday, the 21st of April. We're 2 days away, 2.5 days from the draft starting virtual style.
I have never been more ready for an NFL draft because it's actually just some semblance of not recorded sports.
Well, this is going to be interesting. And I was listening this morning on the radio. There's going to be and they were right. There's going to be a tremendous amount of viewership for the draft, probably more than it ever has been. There's going to be people that aren't even interested, just looking at something that is live and that matters and is actually happening under quarantine. So some way, somehow, technology, baby. So let's dive into it.
All right. Let's go with the first guy because I got a lot of. I want to read some headlines as we dabble into this.
And we're gonna probably, I know you want to try to get down to number 5. I think this first one will probably just cover the first 3, so it'll take some time because these first 3 guys are really, quite frankly, they should. If they don't all go day 1, early day 2, the second and third guy, possible they go day 2, but it won't go past that and it won't get far. So, number 1, the number 1 prospect in the Pac-12 for the 2020 NFL Draft is a gentleman from Eugene, Oregon.
Yep.
A senior coming in at a towering 6'6", 236, 32 7/8-inch arms, 10-inch hands, and yes, that's really the minimum requirement they apparently like to see out of these quarterback prospects is the 10-inch hands, even though some guys are able to succeed with them. But that's what they apparently measure on. Quarterback from the Oregon Ducks, Mr. Justin Herbert. My man Jay, baby.
Yep.
Oh, why don't you go into the headlines before I gush over my man Jay? Because you know how I feel about him.
All right. So, and I'm gonna give kudos where kudos is due. But an interesting little note I did not know: his grandfather played at Oregon, so he has been kind of an Oregon kid, born and bred. And as you talk about, he's from Eugene. So, but I didn't know that. So he played in the '60s. So this kid is a kid that grew up going to football games constantly as a family. He's got big ties. Just an interesting little coinky dink about him. But here's kind of the thing I've seen. So let's talk about the progression in the press of this guy as draft has gone on. It was widely, the phrase started tanking for Tua. So obviously Tua was considered, by all accounts, going to be the number 1 guy coming off the board, before this past season started. Fair to say?
Fair to say.
Okay. Herbert was on the radar, but he wasn't like widely thought of as top 5 initially. You
know how I felt last year when he was a junior, he could have come out and he might have been the number 1 quarterback taken overall.
So I want I'm gonna read you about I think 4 or 5 headlines, and your response to me is simple. It's 1 of 2 words. It's buy or sell. Okay?
Go be KB.
On the draft, on this status. Then we're gonna talk about the guy because I don't want to because we know right now. This is bullshit heaven, which is the 3 days coming up before the draft. This is where teams are all positioning, jockeying, trying to get people off their scent of what they're going to do. Okay, so this comes out from Bleacher Report. This is and these are all from the last couple of hours. Giant smoke on Justin Herbert shows they're ready to trade down in the NFL draft. Buying that or selling that?
Who?
Giants smoke.
The New York Giants.
There was smoke on them. On Justin Herbert shows they're ready to trade down in the NFL draft.
Sell.
Yep, I agree with you there. I think that says a lot. I think you have been talking about this as much as
I would
anybody.
have. I wanted him, before last year. That was my guy all season long. I said, "That's our guy. That's our guy. That's our guy." He decided right there, just past the halfway point, to stay in school his senior year. Announced it, and then it was Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, and then Daniel Jones. I got to see Daniel Jones firsthand play my Tigers when he was quarterback at Duke, and that was I then shifted my. Did I not say that's the guy if we're going to take someone? Now, what I've said going into this year is I still do believe that this kid has got something for us. And I think rather than a lot of quarterbacks, especially that come out, just with a bang for their rookie season, then they hit the sophomore slump, I think he will get better this year. Now, if he doesn't and it's a complete flop, Trevor's coming out next year. But I don't think this year we play the Arizona Cardinal game and go from drafting quarterback first round last year and moving on so soon. He showed us enough, I think. And the whole Eli Manning thing's another story.
Yeah, I sell hard on that only because of all those things, but I sell hard in the sense that right now there's a lot of talk about, and why it's important, I think, is because the idea that teams are willing to trade up for some of these quarterbacks because there's this underlying thought that there could be a run on these guys, and where the cliff comes off. Does the cliff fall off after Herbert and Tua, with Burrow being number one? Does Jordan Love get kind of slung into that? So interesting. Okay, next comment. This is from CBS Sports. It has to do with their mock draft, but it is a headline beyond it. Chargers pass on QB. Jordan Love, Justin Herbert fall to the bottom of the first round. Buying or selling?
On both of them,
the headline as a whole. Did the Chargers
buy and sell?
All right, so tell me. All right, so break them apart. Chargers passing on quarterback, assuming
sell.
Someone's available. Sell on that. Okay. Jordan Love, bottom of the first round.
I could buy it.
Okay. Justin Herbert, I'm going to guess you're going to sell on that one.
All right, he'll be going top 10.
All right, so
sure,
now,
and I think that's even late.
Okay, so that was 2 hours ago from CBS Sports. Now, ESPN, Justin Herbert favored over Tua to be the second quarterback drafted.
I buy it.
All right. Justin Herbert being researched by the New York Giants. We already did that one. I'll skip that. And I thought I saw one more. That might be it. Now these are all kind of related to the Giants. Oh, no. Here's my last one. This is one I wanted to do. This one's from less than 24 hours ago. It's a little older. NFL teams have cooled off on Justin Herbert per report. This is coming from 247 Sports.
I sell.
Okay. All right. So just to give you an idea, the reason why I wanted to do that is
very polarizing. I sell that when you say cooled off. Meaning, like
many teams, not all teams.
I'm not saying they feel it's cooled off in terms of they've already gotten their what they need to know out of him. Now they're just settling down and getting in. All right. Now, if you're saying cooled off and feeling like they're dropping his draft stock down, no, I sell that.
Because the reality is, right now, if Justin Herbert is a franchise quarterback, meaning if people have him on their draft board, because understand something. Everybody still has Chase Young number one. Now, granted, if he gets out of the top 4, the whole world would implode. And I think if he gets out of the top 2, it's stupid. But the fact is, if it happens, teams have to be prepared for that, and they have to be honest. Because when you believe somebody's the generational talent, which generally whoever's top 5 on your board, you believe that, even and especially if they fall. So. And that's kind of why you saw Aaron Rodgers fall, is people did not put him up on the draft board. But I also think people didn't have Alex Smith that high on their draft board going into that draft year. And so, therefore, all of a sudden.
He was one of the top quarterbacks.
No. But I'm talking about in your draft board, you talk about players that you believe are transcendent. They don't order them by quarterback.
Okay. You're saying transcendent.
Right. So meaning,
right.
So my point is, you remember that draft well, because there was, that was the green room and Rodgers sitting there looking foolish, and everybody was like, well, they're 1 and 2, and then all of a sudden Alex Smith got taken, and it was like, wow, Rodgers slipped out of the fifth pick. And it was like he's not even on day 10, and then all of a sudden it's like they stopped showing him because it was embarrassing. The point being is these guys may be further down than other guys, particularly based off need. So it just shows, one, there's a lot of smoke screens out there, but also it's a polarizing player, clearly, in order to have these kind of conversations. And think about it. The Giants just took a guy number 7 overall
the
year before. And we would normally say there's absolutely no way, no how, but you have the Kyler Murray, Josh Rosen recently
why.
too.
That's why people say that.
And
because they set a little bit of a precedent with that.
Right. So now you're trying to figure out, okay, to me, how this draft board goes is there going to be a run on quarterbacks? Because if there's not, I think you're going to see less trading. I do. I think quarterbacks are gonna. If this is gonna be a trade busy,
I don't know.
think
I could, and the next guy we'll talk about, and I don't want to leave Herbert yet, but I mean, like, because of some of the talent that is coming out at the offensive line, particularly the tackle position, I could see a run on that and people moving for that.
Yeah, but there is depth too, though, so that
There
helps.
is, but they also, I think, sometimes it's a gamble with the offense, as it is with everybody. But if you have your guy in that group of offensive line, you're like, okay, I want Wirfs. Okay, we think that Wills will go first to whomever, but if he goes, we got to think about maybe jumping up because not really. I mean, I like Isaiah Wilson, I like Mekhi Becton. I like Austin Jackson, but I don't like him nearly as much as I like Wirfs. So I want to get him. And that's the only other scenario I could see.
I find it interesting. Within 2 hours, you've got CBS, who's CBS Sports, one of the biggest sportscasting media in the world, and they're in one breath saying, "Granted, it was a mock draft, but it's still they're experts." Pegging this guy for later in the round, and yet then you turn around and see ESPN right after that saying this guy's moving ahead of Tua.
Yep.
So let's talk about the guy. Right, let's talk about what we think about the guy.
Let's talk about. I love Justin Herbert. Love him a lot. Why? Because the NFL is becoming a lot more like college in the offensive game, and I think this is the type of kid. He's tall. I love tall quarterbacks, but he's got meat on his bones. He knows how to take a hit if he has to take a hit. He's not a runner, but he is a guy that moves the pocket. I think he throws phenomenally on the run. A couple of the negatives I saw for him out there were that he needs a little more touch on his pass. He played horribly the last 4 games of the season. Okay. You're just looking at 4 games. I mean, I've seen this guy over his career do phenomenally, and I'm going to rattle off some things to you here un momento that, I somewhat disagree with that. Touch. I've seen him throw touch balls as well, okay? So he had bad games the last 4 of the year. I will say this, in the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, which they won, he went 14-20, okay? If you go back to the beginning of the season, the first game, if you remember, they had to play the Auburn Tigers. Pretty good team.
Yep.
Okay? Went 28-37 in that game, okay? And mind you, 1 TD, no picks in that game. Then a few weeks later, they played Stanford. That was the next good team. He went 19-24 for 3 TDs, no picks. Later on in the season, Washington State. I'm rattling off teams for the most part where they were, competition, at least in the Pac-12, if not at, their level. Okay, so then they played Washington State. He goes 21-30, 222, no TDs, no picks. Okay, played USC, who they dominated, and went 21 out of 26, 225, 3 TDs, and a touchdown. And that game
and a pick,
and a pick.
Yep.
And that game was in California. That was in Southern Cal. The guy's accuracy, he and if you look at his numbers, he doesn't throw many picks. He has his days. You're always going to have those. A lot of people are likening him to my man Josh. What's his head there? Up in Buffalo.
Allen.
Josh Allen. I could see it. There's a comp here, Carson Wentz. No, I don't see that.
I don't see that one.
I don't see it at all. No, thank you. I don't see that. This is a kid who I think some of the things that are knocking him are leadership. We've talked about it before. He's not a vocal
He's a quiet
kid.
guy.
He's a quiet kid. But if you, a lot of the things I've seen and read, if you go to head coach Mario Cristobal and you go to the players on the team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they say wonderful things about him. They say he's a great leader. And keep in mind, I might want to see a guy like this, especially this high. A lot of those yardage numbers were below 300,
Yep.
I'd like to maybe see it over that, but don't get it twisted. That team was a run-first team this year. Years prior in his career, it might not have been so much, and he put up the numbers in those yardage, 300-plus yard games.
Yep.
Still with good accuracy. I just think he is that prototypical next generation quarterback for today's offenses in the NFL. I think he fits it well. Is he the best? No, but I think you look at a Josh Allen, which I do think is a better comparison. They could go to the Super Bowl this year because they've got pieces on the other side of the ball and pieces around, and he's got tools. He's just got to mature. He's got to have the right coach. I feel the same way about Jay.
Justin Herbert. Yeah.
Justin Herbert. Yeah, he ran combine-wise. I don't see a bench. He ran a 4.68. Combine for me for a quarterback. I don't know. All I really need to see is I see his measurables. I'm telling you his measurables. I'm telling you this is a kid, and you know it as well as I do. I'm kind of an Oregon guy. I like watching Oregon. Okay. And I like Justin Herbert, and I have this isn't one year wonder. You know as well as I do, for like 2-3 years now, I've been talking about how I like this kid.
Yeah, no, I agree. His passing efficiency, he rebounded after his worst passing efficiency season his junior year. Only completed 59% of his passes. That's scary in college.
But they threw the ball much more that year.
Yeah, not than last year though. His attempts actually went up this past year. But his prior years he did. Has always had a good touchdown to interception ratio. He's been north of 3-1 this year. This year was his most prolific in the scoring side of things with 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. His completion percentage, while not his best was his sophomore year, was pretty close at 66.8. I get a little nervous with quarterbacks getting around that 65 and below mark. Yeah. So it's nice to see him get up because you realize in the NFL, I mean, you have guys with completion percentages close to 70 that generally come out of college. But, obviously in the NFL, being 62 plus is pretty good. It's just a different league. Here is my one critique of him that I'm not really sure of. And it's weird because these two pieces of his game, one I really like and one I do have some questions about, don't generally I don't see a lot of good quarterbacks where I don't see both. You mentioned what I talked about, or we mentioned when we talked about Joe Burrow. One of the things I really liked him is even though he was in that high level prolific offense, I saw him throw the ball to spots. I saw him throw the ball to areas to the man where the other receiver couldn't get it. He threw in very tight windows at times. He demonstrated that ability. What I see out of Herbert that I really like, and this actually became really apparent to me in the Oregon game, so early in the season, if you watch that game, was one, he can throw on the run and he can throw from the pocket, which is a very good thing. There's usually quarterbacks, they're a little awkward in one or the other. He's actually, I think, pretty effective in both. He's good at scanning the field. That's big, right? Being able to get through your progressions. He gets some knocks for that. What I saw of him and what I've looked at, I've seen, and that Auburn game was a big example. He was able to progress through receivers. The thing I don't see a lot out of him, and some of it is the offense and the way it was run. So this is the part I'm not sure about. I'm not going to make a statement, but I didn't see him anticipate throws as much as I've seen out of other quarterbacks. And sometimes you don't have to. Like we talked about Justin Fields. Like I didn't see Justin Fields do that a lot this year.
No, he's wide open guys. Do you think though that in the right system that can still be learned at his stage in his career?
I don't think it can be learned, but I'm not sure he doesn't have it. Like is my point. Right. There's too much upside with him to just discount it and say it's just there is no such thing in the NFL as see a guy open, throw it to him. Right. It just, you're talking
Very
about,
seldom
you're talking about 10% of passes do that. And when you see it, how many times do you see the guys miss on those? Because it's almost like, oh my God, why is this guy so wide open? And the quarterback gets too antsy. And so this is the kind of thing, but I will say this, I don't think Lamar Jackson has a lick of that. But yet, look what he did this year. So I can't deny that they've turned him into a superstar quarterback. Now, can he continue to do that? That's going to be the interesting thing. So it's weird to me. I would think if you can scan the field, meaning you're feeling what's happening. So it would only make sense to me that he can throw with anticipation. I just didn't see it as much as I would have
from a psychological perspective, based on everything I've said and you said, maybe he just needs to learn to just cut it loose, because maybe if he is that maybe quieter kid, maybe there's something inside him that's a little reserved. Again, his TD to interception ratio is good. Maybe he just wants to keep that like that, and take as many chances, where he might have to learn to, it's not all on me. I have some good guys. Let me use those guys. So what do you think in terms of where he's going to end up going, buddy? Straight up. I mean, could Detroit pull one at the number 3 pick and decide to take a guy like this? I mean, who's going to take him?
I think Detroit and the Giants are in a very poor attempt, because I don't think it's just too obvious, are trying to trade out. You know what I mean? And I'm not faulting them. It's not that they're incompetent. It's just,
I know
it just makes so much sense.
Trading out.
Nobody's buying. I agree with you. And if they do, I think it's going to shock a lot of people. Nobody's really buying the Chargers going with Tyrod.
Right.
Okay. But I've seen crazier things, so it could happen. But to me, right now, you've got 4 extremely
the Bengals could draft Burrow, and then after the smoke clears with the draft, then maybe they try to make a move for Andy Dalton. Maybe they try. I mean, Cam's still out.
Yeah, there's still Cam. There's still Andy Dalton. Those are the 2 probably bigger names from experienced guys. So it is possible. And the thing with Cam is Cam doesn't cost anybody any.
Where do you
draft
realistically think my man Jay is going to be?
I think he could be inside the top 5 with a trade up.
Who do you think's going to draft him? If it stays,
the same,
stays the way it is. Because even if there's moves made, I kind of think that the order.
If it stays the way that it goes, I think he goes to either the Chargers.
Not either. Give me one.
Well, no, he would go to Miami. The part I don't know is he move up ahead of Tua? Because again, the injury concerns thing is a different animal right now.
I think if it stayed the way it is,
and Tua goes 5, I'd say Chargers.
Chargers will take him.
I do think this.
I
don't think he gets past Jacksonville.
No,
but I also think Jacksonville and the Chargers are probably the most dangerous teams to trade up right now.
Yep.
And really you have to throw in Miami, that if Miami really gets the feeling that someone's moving on their guy, Miami has the most draft capital in the first round. So I could see that they could package their latest first rounder. I mean, I don't know the exact scoring on those.
The Giants are at 4, just one before them. We don't have a 3rd round pick. So, I mean, we could easily, if they wanted to even move up there for some reason or another, I think something would have to shake up ahead of us. But believe it or not, between 2 and 3, really. But, we might take an offer to drop back to 5 there, maybe take their 3rd round pick, maybe take a first next year or something like that. I mean, that's only one spot.
I would see if the Giants or Detroit, either one of them get a trade, they're getting a first rounder this year and a first rounder, 2 first rounders this year. I think.
Okay.
I just think there's too many teams with that stack. You got to remember, you've got Jacksonville out there with 2 first rounders too as well.
Yes.
And as much as they're trying to sell,
this is so interesting, because these teams that are all really need to change the fate of their entire. We've talked about it before. What is their projection? What is their how do they see their team moving forward? What are they going to be? There's a lot of teams in this draft that need to do that overall, let alone at the quarterback position. But those teams also have a lot of draft capital in the entire draft, let alone the first round. So
very
interesting.
Think about this. This is another interesting part, and we could probably cut it from here, but just an idea to think about is, think about Jacksonville's position right now. This is why Jacksonville, to me, is the most probably dangerous team out there. Who are their 2 best players on Jacksonville right now?
Ngakoue and Fournette.
Okay. Who are the 2 guys that are widely believed to be on the trading block right now?
Ngakoue, and we just heard Fournette.
Right. Okay, so think about this. You're in Duval County, okay? We're not talking about Chicago. We're not talking about L.A. We're not talking about New York. You know it. You watch Giants games, and you knew they were going to be bad this year. Why? Because it's a rabid fan base. It's got a lot of population. You are talking about the small of the small market teams. How are you going to fill that stadium if those 2 guys are on the block? Say they get, even if they don't get moved, they're disgruntled at the very least, right? and you're going to lose them eventually, who on that team elicits excitement to come and see? They've got to make a splash because they're pissing off everybody else. And they've gone in the exact opposite direction. Now,
I think they will.
I'm not saying they're making the wrong move, but you got to put butts in the seats today. And that's the type of organization where in 5-10 years from now, we could be talking about how they're playing in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean?
I hear you.
That because they could easily lose their following because they didn't have a strong market to begin with. That is probably of all the expansions I've seen, that was probably the weakest expansion.
I feel you.
From just a structural standpoint.
I feel you.
You've been to Jacksonville?
Yeah, well, and there's already 3 other teams inside the state, right? Or 2 other teams. Tampa, Miami. Yeah, that's it. There's with them 3.
Yeah, so what are you pulling? You pulling the Savannah
Yeah,
crowd? You know, so anyway,
I got
so
you.
my point is I think that could be where this comes into play and why I'm not buying the late round projection because there's too many people that are hungry and that want to believe. Herbert would be the kind of guy I would think, though, just kind of my last line is, if at all possible, I don't know that it's going to be, is seeing him hold a clipboard for a year.
It would be
but
good.
I think that would be good for
It would
most
be
of the
good,
quarterbacks,
but I
to be
don't
honest
think,
with you.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
I don't think that's
just don't
realistic.
think, but based on the needs and where they're going to get drafted, I don't think they can wait that long. And there's no one in the I get it. All right, so that's it. We're going to stop that one because that was all Justin Herbert.
It's getting close, man. He's too polarized.
I know.
I couldn't help myself.
It's all right, dude. I wanted to talk about him. We might be able to fly through the rest. So we will cut this up and see you next time
On the gridiron.
See ya.